Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, I want to remind you of something that is often misunderstood, especially in this world where emotions are glorified and desire is mistaken for destiny. Not every love is a blessing. Yes, you heard that right. Not every love that enters your life is from Allah as a gift. Sometimes that very love you're holding on to may be a test, a trial, even a distraction. And if not handled correctly, it could become a form of destruction. Many of us grow up hearing that love is beautiful, that when you fall in love, everything suddenly makes sense. And while that may be partially true, as Muslims we must always pause and ask, what kind of love is this? And more importantly, where is it taking me? You see, not every love is a blessing. In fact, sometimes the very thing that you think is a gift is actually a test in disguise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, places certain people, certain emotions, and certain situations in your life not to complete you, but to examine your heart, to test your intentions, to see what you will do when your emotions conflict with His commands. We must remember that love is not always the happy ending we imagine. Sometimes, love enters your life to reveal who you truly are. It shakes your soul and brings out the best or the worst in you. It can either soften your heart and bring you closer to Allah, or it can blind you and distance you from Him. And that's when you know you're being tested. Many people assume that just because something feels strong, it must be right. But feelings are not facts. Just because you feel something intensely does not mean it is a gift from Allah. Shaitan too can place desires in your heart. He can beautify a path that leads to destruction and make it look like it's your destiny. Imagine a person who falls in love, deeply and passionately, but that love causes them to miss their salah, lie to their parents, compromise their modesty and disobey Allah. Can that love be a blessing, or is it a test? It's not hard to answer when you take a step back. Anything that causes you to move away from Allah, even if it comes in the form of something sweet, is not a true gift. It's a trial. Sometimes Allah gives you what you desire to show you that it's not what you need. You might be yearning for a specific person, constantly making dua for them, thinking they are the one, but Allah withholds them or distances them from you. Not because He wants to hurt you, but because He loves you more than you love yourself. He knows what you cannot see. He knows that this love will eventually lead you to heartbreak, to sin, or to spiritual weakness. And so, in His mercy, He denies it. That is when your faith is tested. Because we often think that a test only comes in the form of hardship. But some of the biggest tests come in the form of ease, comfort, or even love. The love you have for someone could be the very thing that Allah is using to see whether you love Him more. That person you adore may be the reason you're delayed in your spiritual growth, or the cause of your sleepless nights and restless heart. And Allah asks you silently through His qadr, will you choose me over them? This is the true definition of a test, when you are torn between what your heart wants and what your Lord commands. And the believer who wins in such moments is the one who says, Ya Allah, I love this person, but I love you more. And if letting go is what pleases you, then I surrender. That is the heart of a mu'min. That is the kind of heart that finds peace. Letting go of a love that you thought was everything can feel like tearing away a piece of your soul. But the moment you do it for the sake of Allah, you'll feel His mercy replace that void. You'll feel your strength return. You'll realize that the test wasn't to punish you, it was to purify you. And when you pass that test, when you walk away from something you once begged Allah for, simply because it did not align with His pleasure, He replaces it. Maybe not with the same kind of love, but with something far better. Maybe He replaces it with peace, with barakah, with a connection to Him that fills your heart in a way no human being ever could. So the next time you find yourself wondering why someone you loved left your life, or why a relationship didn't work out, or why you had to walk away from someone you thought was your soulmate, remind yourself, love is not always a blessing. Sometimes it's a test. And if you pass that test by choosing Allah, then know with certainty you haven't lost anything at all. In fact, you've just won everything. In a world where everything is about feelings, we are constantly told to follow our heart. If it feels right, it must be right, they say. But Islam teaches us something much deeper and wiser. In Islam, it's not enough for something to feel good, it has to be halal. Because only what is halal will bring lasting peace to your heart and barakah to your life. That's why true love in the eyes of Allah is not based on impulsive emotions. It is defined by purity, commitment, and respect. True love is only love when it is bound by halal. You see, love is not haram. Islam doesn't forbid love. In fact, love is part of our faith. The Prophet Muhammad loved Khadija with such depth and loyalty that he continued to honor her memory even after her death. He loved Aisha with affection and tenderness. He loved his companions. He loved his ummah. So love itself is not the problem. The problem is when love is pursued in ways that go against the commands of Allah. That's when what could have been a blessing turns into a trap. When a young man says he loves a girl but does not approach her through the door of halal, by involving her family, respecting her boundaries and intending marriage, then what is he really doing? Is that love, or is it desire disguised as affection? True love doesn't hide in secret messages or stolen glances. True love is honest, it is respectful, it honors the woman, her dignity and her future. It doesn't ask her to compromise her faith for the sake of keeping someone around. The same applies to a sister who says she's in love with someone but continues to message him, meet him in private, or dream of a future without involving her parents or guardian. No matter how much affection is in her heart, if the relationship is not halal, then it cannot be called a blessing, because Allah does not bless what He has prohibited. Let us remind ourselves of what the Quran says: do not approach zina. Indeed, it is ever an immorality and is evil as a way. Surah Al-Isra 1732. Notice, Allah doesn't just say don't commit zina, He says don't even come near it. That includes everything that leads to it: private conversations without a legitimate reason, emotional intimacy without a nikah, and developing bonds that are not protected by the boundaries of marriage. Why such strictness? Because Allah knows the nature of the human heart. He knows that once you start feeding it with what is forbidden, it becomes greedy, reckless, and easily deceived. You may argue, but we love each other. Yes, that may be true. But love is not a justification for sin. In fact, the real test of love is not how far you're willing to go for someone. It's how much you're willing to restrain yourself for their sake and for the sake of Allah. If you truly love someone, you will protect their soul before you touch their hand. You will value their akhirah before their appearance. You will ask yourself, is this relationship helping us grow closer to Jannah or pulling us closer to regret? That is why Islam gives us a structure. The nikah is not just a formality, it's a shield, a protection, a declaration that this bond has been built on taqwa, not temptation. Marriage in Islam is not just about physical closeness, it's about spiritual partnership. Two people coming together not just for dunya, but for deen. And when love happens in this framework, when it is pursued through halal means, it becomes powerful. It brings sakina, tranquility, to the heart. It earns the dua of angels. It carries the barakah of Allah. But love outside of halal, no matter how intense, eventually brings pain. You may not see it right away, but it comes. The guilt, the fear of being exposed, the worry of what others will think, the sleepless nights, the emotional roller coaster. This is not the love that Islam speaks of. This is not the love that builds homes or raises righteous children. This is the love that destroys your peace, little by little. So if you are in love, ask yourself, have I taken the steps to make it halal? Am I approaching this person with dignity, with honesty, and with the intention to make it pleasing to Allah? If not, then take a step back, reassess, purify your intentions, because love is only beautiful when it is protected by the boundaries that Allah Himself has given us. And remember this, the one who truly loves you will fear Allah regarding you. They won't put you in situations that could lead you to sin. They will encourage you to do what is right, even if it means being patient. That is the kind of love worth waiting for. That is the kind of love that deserves to be called a blessing. One of the biggest misconceptions in life is thinking that every love will bring peace. We assume that if we feel strongly about someone, if our heart races when we see them, if we can't stop thinking about them, then surely this must be something good, maybe even from Allah. But the reality is, not all love leads to peace. Some loves enter your life like storms. They confuse you, they distract you, they lead you to disobey your Creator. And no matter how beautiful they look on the outside, they never bring tranquility inside your heart. Peace, true peace, comes from being connected to Allah. It comes from being in a relationship, a friendship, or even a marriage that nurtures your deen and strengthens your soul. Any love that causes you to feel distant from your prayers, that invites you into secrecy, sin, or heartbreak, is not love that brings peace. It is love that tests your discipline, your values, and your loyalty to your faith. There are people who will tell you they love you, and yet they are the reason your heart is heavy with guilt. They tell you they care about you, but being with them makes you feel ashamed in front of Allah. You hesitate before opening the Quran, you feel distant in your salah, and your mind is preoccupied with thoughts of someone who isn't even allowed to be that close to you. Can that really be love, and can it ever lead to peace? When Allah describes the purpose of marriage in the Quran, He uses the word sakina, which means tranquility. He says, and among His signs is that He created for you from yourselves spouses that you may find tranquility in them, and He placed between you affection and mercy. Surah Ar-Rum 30:21. Now think about this. If Allah says that the sign of a blessed relationship is tranquility, then the absence of peace is also a sign. It tells you something. It tells you this connection may not be what it seems. It might feel like love, but it could just be attachment, or worse, a distraction sent to test your heart. It is important to know that love in Islam is not just about how someone makes you feel emotionally. It is about how that relationship affects your soul. Do you feel closer to Allah when you're with this person? Do you find yourself making dua, praying tahajjud, and being more conscious of your behavior? Or do you find yourself rushing your prayers, hiding your phone conversations, and making excuses for actions you know are not pleasing to Allah? The answer to these questions is what separates a peaceful love from a destructive one. Some people say, but I can't help who I love. And yes, feelings can come unexpectedly. Allah is the one who created the heart, and He knows how easily it can become attached. But the test is not in having the feeling. The test is in what you do with it. Do you allow the love to lead you down a path of sin and spiritual loss? Or do you recognize that if this love isn't bringing peace, then perhaps it's time to walk away for the sake of Allah and for the sake of your own soul? The people who truly love you are the ones who make you feel calm, who respect you enough to keep their intentions pure, who remind you of Allah when you begin to forget, who support your deen and inspire you to grow in your relationship with your Creator. That is real love. That is the kind of love that Allah places barakah in. And that kind of love will never make you feel anxious, afraid, or empty. So, if you're holding on to a relationship that is stealing your peace, take a moment and ask yourself, what am I really gaining? And what am I losing in return? You may be holding on to a person, but letting go of your prayer. You may be chasing a feeling, but falling further from your faith. No person is worth the cost of your connection with Allah, because at the end of the day, it is only Allah who gives true peace. It is only through Him that your heart can be whole. No matter how much someone claims to love you, if that love is pulling you away from Allah, it is not worth keeping. There is a reason why the heart finds rest in obedience, not in sin. There is a reason why the Prophet said, verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Ra'd 13:28. If your heart is not at rest in a relationship, it is a sign that something is missing. And most likely, what's missing is the pleasure of Allah. Bring Him back into the equation and you'll see that not every love is meant to last, but the peace that comes from choosing Him will never leave you. The heart, my brothers and sisters, is not just an organ that beats inside your chest. In Islam, the heart is the spiritual center of your being. It is the seat of your sincerity, your iman, your intentions, your love, and your connection with your Creator. It is a vessel, a container, and what you choose to fill it with determines the state of your soul. That's why it's essential to understand that the heart was created to carry Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, not lust, temptation, or worldly obsession. When Allah gives you a heart, He gives it to you so that you fill it with His remembrance, with love for Him, with reliance on Him, and with humility before Him. It was never designed to be consumed by the fleeting desires of this dunya. And when you allow lust, infatuation, and haram emotions to overtake your heart, you are misusing the very gift that Allah entrusted you with. Many people today speak of love in a way that resembles addiction. They say, I can't live without this person, or my heart belongs to them. But as Muslims, we have to pause and think, did Allah create your heart to belong to another human being, or to belong to Him first? The answer is clear. Your heart was created to know Him, to worship Him, to long for Him. Any love that you feel for others must come after that, and it must never contradict that. When love for someone competes with your love for Allah, that love is dangerous. Lust, unlike true love, is selfish. It is impulsive. It is often disguised as love, but in reality, it feeds the ego and weakens the soul. You begin to obsess, to desire, to chase after someone, not for who they are, but for how they make you feel. And in doing so, You start to distance yourself from Allah. You lose focus in your salah. You stop making dua. You begin to justify sins. And you ignore the whispers of your conscience. That is when you know your heart is no longer carrying Tawheed. It's carrying something else. The Prophet Muhammad told us that in the body there is a piece of flesh. And if it is sound, the whole body is sound. But if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. And that is the heart. So what happens when the heart is full of lust, of unchecked emotion, of haram attachments? The rest of the body follows. The eyes begin to wander. The hands begin to touch what they shouldn't. The tongue begins to speak what it shouldn't. And the legs begin to walk toward what displeases Allah. All because the heart was not protected. You must guard your heart. Just like you would never pour poison into a cup and then drink from it, don't let poison enter your heart through the wrong kind of love or desire. The heart is too precious. It is your key to Jannah, and it can only remain pure if it is protected with sincerity, dhikr, and a strong connection to Allah. In this age of social media, it's easy to fall in love with an image, a message, a voice. People begin to feel strong emotions without even knowing a person's reality. They form emotional bonds through messages, DMs, and late-night conversations, thinking this is love. But often it's not love. It's just lust dressed up in romantic words. And the more you allow that feeling to grow without the boundaries of halal, the more it takes up space in your heart that was meant for Allah. There's nothing wrong with wanting companionship. It is natural, it is human. But even that desire must be controlled and purified. You ask Allah to give you a spouse who will be a garment for you, as the Quran describes, a source of peace, a means of protection. But until then, your heart must remain loyal to your Creator. If you fill your heart with Tawheed, with the love and fear of Allah, there will be no room for destructive desires to take root. And here's the beauty of it. When your heart is full of Allah, He will never allow it to be filled with the wrong person. He will protect you from attachments that break you. He will guide you away from people who misuse your emotions. And He will replace every temporary feeling with something real, something halal, something blessed. So ask yourself today, what is filling your heart? Is it remembrance or distraction? Is it love for Allah or love for someone who is leading you away from Him? Purify your heart, cleanse it from lust, and fill it with Tawheed, because only then will you find peace, direction, and the kind of love that lifts you, not the kind that destroys you. In life, many people confuse infatuation with true love. The difference between the two may not always be obvious at first glance, but over time, the truth always shows. Infatuation is fast, shallow, and based mostly on feelings, looks, or charm. It's exciting, yes. It takes over your mind, yes. But it fades quickly when tested by reality. True love, on the other hand, is something deep. It is slow to build, rooted in values, character, sincerity, and most importantly, obedience to Allah. You see, one of the biggest traps of Shaitan is to take what is temporary and make it seem permanent. He makes you feel like this rush of emotions, this longing you feel for someone, this intense attachment must be real love. So people fall headfirst into emotional attachment, often ignoring every red flag, every wrong sign, every Islamic guideline. And they justify it. But I love them, they say. But do you? Or are you just infatuated with how they make you feel? Infatuation makes you see only the best side of someone. It blinds you. It makes you overlook incompatibilities, flaws, and even serious red flags. It doesn't want to hear advice. It doesn't want to wait. It wants everything now. It rushes. That's why so many people fall into haram, because infatuation is impatient. It doesn't want to wait for nikah. It doesn't want to get to know someone through their family. It doesn't want to observe Islamic manners and boundaries. It wants what it wants, when it wants. But true love is built on taqwa. It fears Allah. It takes its time. It wants the best for the other person's dunya and akhirah. It doesn't just want to enjoy someone. It wants to protect them. It doesn't say, I love you while leading you into sin. It says, I love you too much to risk your akhirah. That's the kind of love that lasts. When you look at the relationships that are blessed and successful in the long term, you will notice something. They didn't start with infatuation. They started with sincerity, with intention, with dara, and with a deep understanding of what love really means. Love is not butterflies. Love is praying for someone at night without them knowing. Love is lowering your gaze, even when you desire them. Love is knocking on the door of their wali, not sneaking into their DMs. Love is having the courage to wait, to remain halal, even when your heart feels weak. Sadly, many today chase after what's exciting instead of what's lasting. And that's why they keep getting hurt. They call it love, but it's only desire. They call it destiny, but it's only emotional impulsiveness. And the worst part is, they invest everything into that feeling. They pour their heart, their time, their energy, even their religion into someone who was never committed to begin with. And when it ends, they are broken, confused, and spiritually drained. That's why Islam teaches us to build love on the right foundation. The Prophet told us to look for deen and character when choosing a spouse. Why? Because beauty fades, charm fades, feelings change. But taqwa, honesty, humility, those are the things that hold a relationship together when life gets difficult. And life will get difficult. Marriage is not a fantasy. It is not a constant state of romance and butterflies. It is sacrifice, forgiveness, loyalty, and patience. That's why you can't build a life on infatuation. It simply won't last. And don't forget, Shaitan loves rushed love. He fuels it. He whispers, "It's okay, just a conversation, just a meeting, just a little closeness. You'll make it halal later." And step by step, he pulls the heart away from Allah. He paints the haram with beautiful colors, making it look like it's the only thing that will make you happy. But after the excitement fades, you're left with guilt, regret, and a heart that has lost its peace. So the next time you feel something strong for someone, pause. Don't let your emotions lead you. Turn to Allah first. Make istikhara. Seek advice. Ask yourself, is this love or just longing? Is this person guiding me to the path of Allah or distracting me from it? Is this love growing within the walls of halal, or are we crossing lines just to stay connected? Because in the end, true love is never rushed, never secretive, never built on sin. True love is honest, responsible, respectful, and most importantly, it is pleasing to Allah. And any love that begins with obedience to Allah is a love that can carry you all the way to Jannah. That is the kind of love worth waiting for. That is the kind of love that doesn't fade, it grows, and it brings peace, not pain. There is a powerful hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that is simple, yet deeply profound. He said, "You are with those whom you love." This isn't just about the Day of Judgment, though that is certainly one of the major implications. It is also about who you are in this world, who influences you, and what your heart is attached to. Because at the end of the day, who you choose to love says a lot about who you are. Love, whether we admit it or not, is a reflection of the heart. If your heart is pure, you will be drawn to purity. If your heart is attached to Allah, you will be drawn to people who bring you closer to Him. But if your heart is filled with the love of dunya, desires and temptations, you will find yourself gravitating toward those who feed that hunger, not those who help you cure it. Take a moment to reflect. Who do you admire? Who do you chase? Who do you cry for, pray for, think about day and night? Is it someone who helps you become better? Or someone who drains you spiritually? If your heart clings to someone who causes you to forget your obligations to Allah, that's not just a relationship problem. It's a sign of your spiritual condition. Because the people you love the most are the ones you have allowed to influence your soul the most. When you look at the companions of the Prophet, their love for him was not just emotional, it was spiritual. They loved him because he reminded them of their purpose. He brought them closer to Allah. He showed them the path to Jannah. That's what true love looks like. Not just someone who gives you butterflies, but someone who gives you light. Someone who lifts your iman, who makes you want to improve, who holds your hand and says, "Let's get to Jannah together." In our time, many people confuse love with attraction, with obsession, with worldly attachment. They follow celebrities, influencers, or individuals who have little or no concern for the deen. They love based on looks, wealth, or status. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to reflect those they admire. The Prophet's words are not just about physical companionship. They speak to an emotional and spiritual connection. You become like those you love. You absorb their habits. Their values become your values. Their direction becomes your direction. And if that direction is away from Allah, you may not even realize how far you've drifted until you've lost yourself completely. Now consider this. If you love someone who fears Allah, who encourages you to lower your gaze, who reminds you to pray, who speaks to you with honesty and kindness, who sets boundaries not because they don't care, but because they do, then that love is a sign of something beautiful in you. It reflects your own yearning to be close to Allah, because hearts naturally recognize and are drawn to what they value. And if, on the other hand, you find yourself in love with someone who constantly invites you into haram, who makes you lie to your parents, who says if you loved me, you'd break the rules, then you must stop and ask, why does my heart crave this? What is broken inside of me that finds comfort in someone who is harming my akhirah? You see, we often blame others for our spiritual downfall, but the truth is, we allow people into our hearts. We give them permission to influence us. We choose them, consciously or unconsciously, and that choice says everything about who we are. So it's not just about who they are, it's about who we are becoming because of them. That's why we must ask Allah constantly, Ya Muqallib al-Qulub, Thabit Kalbi ala Dinik, O turner of hearts, keep my heart firm upon your religion, because hearts are fragile, they flip, they attach easily, and sometimes they attach to the wrong people for the wrong reasons, but with dua, with awareness, with the right company, the heart can be healed, it can be redirected. So today, take a step back, look at who you love, look at who you admire. Ask yourself, if I were to die in this state, would I want to stand before Allah with this heart? Am I loving someone who reflects my faith or my desires? Because, in the end, who you love isn't just about them, it's a mirror showing you who you really are. And the beauty is, you can always change what's in your heart by changing who you let into it. One of the most dangerous things a believer can do, often without realizing it, is allow their love for someone to overpower their love for Allah. It begins subtly, a feeling in the heart, a connection, an attachment. At first it feels innocent, it feels human. But if not kept in check, that emotional attachment can grow so strong that you begin to disobey Allah just to please a person. You start to compromise your values, ignore your prayers, and justify haram, all in the name of love. And that is when love becomes dangerous. That is when love can become a form of shirk. Now, of course, not the major shirk that takes one out of the fold of Islam, but a hidden shirk, what the Prophet referred to as shirk al-khafi, the subtle, quiet type that creeps into the heart. It is when a person begins to place someone else on a pedestal in their life so high that their decisions are no longer guided by what Allah wants, but by what that person wants. When pleasing the creation becomes more important than pleasing the Creator. This type of attachment can consume a person. They can become so emotionally dependent on someone that their happiness, their mental state, and their peace are entirely tied to that person. If they are around, they feel whole. If they are gone, they fall apart. They cry not because they've drifted from Allah, but because they've drifted from a person. And that's a dangerous place to be spiritually, because your heart was never created to serve another human being. It was created to serve Allah. The human heart is fragile. It is easily influenced, easily attached. And that's why Islam puts such a strong emphasis on Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, not just in our worship, but in our loyalty, our love, our dependence, our hope, and our fear. When any of these core elements shift away from Allah and become tied to a person, we risk spiritual ruin. Because people are not permanent. They change, they leave, they disappoint. But Allah never does. Imagine someone falling so deeply in love that they begin to abandon the path of Allah just to keep that relationship alive. They lie to their parents, they skip their prayers, they entertain haram conversations, they ignore the guilt that Allah placed in their heart, and all of this because they fear losing a person more than they fear losing their connection with their Lord. That is not just heartbreak, that is a form of spiritual enslavement. The Prophet Muhammad said, "May the slave of the dinar and dirham be destroyed." Bukhari. He was referring to those who become enslaved to wealth, but the principle applies to anything. The moment your heart becomes enslaved to anything other than Allah, whether it's money, status, or a person, you are no longer spiritually free. You are chained by your desires, and that chain can drag you away from Allah without you even realizing it. That's why one of the greatest du'as you can make is, "O Allah, do not make our hearts attached to what will not benefit us in your sight." Because not every love is good for you. Some loves are sent as tests. And if you fail the test, by making that love greater than your love for Allah, you risk turning that test into a punishment. But the beauty of Islam is that Allah is most merciful. If you realize that your heart has become attached in an unhealthy way, you can still return. You can still purify your love. You can realign your priorities. Letting go of an unhealthy attachment does not mean your heart will never love again. It means you are making space in your heart for the right kind of love. The kind that pleases Allah. The kind that brings barakah. The kind that does not make you compromise your faith. Real love does not ask you to sin. It does not make you hide from your family. It does not force you to choose between it and your deen. Real love fits within the boundaries of Islam, and if a love doesn't fit within those boundaries, it is not worth keeping, no matter how intense the feelings are, because no one, absolutely no one, is worth losing Jannah for. So protect your heart, guard it with dhikr, purify it with dua, fill it with the love of Allah first, and everything else will fall into place. Love people, but don't worship them, care for them, but don't depend on them for your happiness, because your heart belongs to Allah, and only when it belongs to Him fully will you ever find the peace, the stability, and the kind of love that leads you, not away from Him, but closer to Him.